Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Helen Croydon, who is the author of This Girl Ran, Tales of a Party Girl Turned Triathlete. It's a memoir about ditching a glamorous city girl lifestyle, toughening up through outdoor sports, and 2 years later qualifying to be a GB age group triathlete. Hi, Helen.
Hello.
How are things with you?
Yeah, good. Legs aching as usual. That's pretty much the permanent state that I'm always in. Whenever people say, "How are you?" I'm always thinking, "Yeah." I always say, "I'm good," but then I'm thinking, "But I'm aching all over." It's just like a permanent thing lately.
No, I can imagine you must be doing lots of training. But tell everybody just a little bit more about you and your background and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm an author and journalist and producer. So I'm freelance, so I work across both print media, broadcast and digital. And I've had 3 books out. So my latest book is called This Girl Ran, Tales of a Party Girl Turned Triathlete. And it is about just that. It is about my transformation from going from a bit of a city girl with a, dare I say it, glamorous lifestyle and discovering outdoor sport and really toughening up through that, and then going on to qualify to be a GB age group triathlete, which I did 2.5 years ago. So the story is it's my story. It's a memoir. I mean, it's funny because it's very much like clueless city girl, doesn't have a clue what she's doing and turns up in muddy fields, and it's that kind of thing. Turns up with a designer handbag kind of thing. But it's also got the soul searching element, because getting into outdoor sport, first running and then triathlon, really did change my life, and it's made me a more wholesome person. It's changed my social circles. It's made me realize what a beautiful country we live in. It's just changed my life beyond what I ever would have imagined. So that's what my book is about.
I mean, when were you growing up? Did you have an interest in the sports and the outdoors and doing PE? Was that part of your life or not really?
No, but then funnily that you say that, because actually I say in the book how I was sporty when I was a child, and I forgot about this. I've always seen myself as a young adult. I've always seen myself as not sporty and a bit of a glamorous type and a bit of a girly girl. But then actually I look back and I think, you know what? When I was a kid, I was really into the outdoors. I was mad into horses, and I used to go to the stables as much as I possibly can. Sometimes I'd cycle there from school, which is 3 miles, which when you're 12 years old is quite a long way. And I'd run to the fields and get in as many of the horses as I could, in the chance that there might be a free ride. So actually I had this affinity with nature and adventure, and I think most people do when they're children, and it's somehow we just lose it when we become adults. And what I found when I was writing my book was actually, it's not that I've just become sporty. It's actually I've just rediscovered what I had as a child, and I think what many of us have. And it's funny because when we're kids, we don't worry about getting dirty, or we don't worry about having helmet hair, or the fact that our feet might get wet when we're playing outside. And these are all the things which I think I just lost when I got into early adulthood, and then getting into outdoor sport again as 3-4 years ago. It was like going back to being that child again, and just realizing that actually the outdoors is so therapeutic. And it was just like kind of touching base with that raw side of us, really.
It's interesting, isn't it? Sort of looking back, I think when you're at school, if you are encouraged/forced to do the team activity, so whether it's hockey, netball, running, athletics, whatever it is, and then gradually you can just start to move away from it, and you do see it a lot in adolescent girls.
Yeah
Tell us a bit more about what happened then. So you sort of you lost this love of the outdoors.
I think I did, because like a lot of people, I think when we get to late teens or early 20s, we just get swept up in this consumer society. I think that's, you get attracted to sparkly things, and life becomes very aspirational, and you want to get on the social ladder, and we all lose touch with that outdoorsy side. So for me, I think I'm trying to think, when it was I lost touch with that, probably as a late teen, wanting to fit in. And then I went off to university. And from then, I never considered myself sporty from the age of, say, 18 to about 32. Became quite an indoor person, really. Now, I was fit because I think I've always been health conscious. So my story is not a story of couch potato to GB triathlete. But when I say fit, I used the gym. So I was just like many, typical kind of image conscious young professional, in that I went to the gym 3 times a week, maybe went for the odd run, but it was purely for vanity purposes, really. It's just because I wanted to stay slim. I never worked out because I wanted to feel that true sense of exertion, and I wanted to see what my body could do, and which is what I now train for. And that's what was so enlightening for me, was that, fitness is not a chore. It's not about wanting to look good. It's actually the rewards that I discovered through getting into running in later life was just this realization what the body can do, what the mind can do, what we can push ourselves through, what you don't realize. When I was in my, say, mid-20s, living my typical city lifestyle, I seriously wouldn't even go out in the rain if I had to. I'd much rather get a taxi in case my hair got wet. I was that kind of girl. And now I think what I do, like most weekends, I'm out on my bike, no matter what the weather. I just put up with things, and it's outdoor sport that's taught me to do that. Because I remember when I first got into running club, and I went to my first cross country race, and I remember we all had to start in a puddle in this field. And bear in mind that this was my first any race since high school, really. So it was the first time I'd actually been on a start line. And I just remember this sense of cringing. Oh my God, I've got to stand in a puddle. My feet are going to get soaking wet. And then the start whistle going and everyone just running and this mud splashing everywhere. And to me, it was this moment of feeling liberated, because there I was, this city girl with a bit of a cosseted lifestyle, and suddenly running through this puddle, getting splattered with mud. And it was this realization that actually nothing bad happened. You can get cold and wet and muddy. And guess what? I went to the pub afterwards and I dried out and I survived, and I didn't get an incurable skin condition. And it was kind of very little things like that which made me realize that we can do so much more. And of course, that was at the very beginning of my journey. And slowly I did more tougher and tougher things and wanted to push more boundaries. And of course, I do much tougher things than standing in a puddle in a field now. But that's how it all started, this realization that we can do it. You can live through it.
So let's just go back to the change. Like, what happened before that point? How did it come about? What happened in your life, or what made you want to make this change? Or I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, so I was 36 at the time. So that was 4 years ago from now. And all my friends seemed to be moving out of London, having children. I went through a breakup myself. So it was these two things combined just made me really feel that there was a gap in my life. And I kind of went from someone who was really busy, really gregarious, had a thriving social life, to suddenly having nothing to do on my weekends. So the breakup was my decision, but even so, it does leave a big gap in your life when you're used to spending your weekends with someone, and then suddenly there's nothing to do anymore. And it was this case of, oh my gosh, where have all my friends gone? I used to have too many friends, because I think everyone in their 20s just, it's so easy to make friends, isn't it, when you're younger? And then suddenly get to my 30s, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm actually bored and there's no one around. And then in addition to that, I really wanted to stop drinking. So I think it's quite easy in life to find new drinking buddies. And that's always been my default in the past. It's quite easy to find colleagues to go for a drink with, or get invited to friends of friends parties. But all these things, because my true friends were moving away, all these all the social things that were left in my life just seemed so peripheral, and they all seemed to involve drinking. And I was just so sick of everything. Every time I needed human company, it seemed to involve alcohol. So it was a need for a new social scene, and a social scene that didn't involve drinking all the time, that made me look up local sports clubs. And I discovered that there was a local running club. It was called Victoria Park Harriers. It's in East London. And I joined. So I went along one night, mainly with this image in my head of, oh, this is going to be a springboard into a new social life. We'll be going to races at weekends. And I think I wanted that camaraderie of a big social group, but didn't necessarily want it to end up in the pub like every other one of my social interactions did. So I turned up at this running club one Thursday night in autumn 2013. And I was really intimidated because I thought, oh, these are going to be really outdoorsy, seasoned, hardy outdoor runners, you know. And I remember looking around, everyone like had the kit, and I was in my gym kit because I wasn't really a runner. I was into fitness. So I had this, you know, the designer yoga pants or whatever it was I was wearing. And I joined the longest run. I don't know why I did it. The group was splitting up into 4-mile runs, 6-mile runs, and 10-mile runs. And I don't know what possessed me, but I joined the 10-mile group. I think it was just this desire. Yeah, I've never ran 10 miles. The furthest I'd ever ran at this point in my whole life was 10K. So that's 6 miles. And even that was only 2 weeks before, because I just gradually been building up my running. And I think it was just this desire to, right, I'm doing this. I want to make it count. Or maybe it was just a desire to fit into this new social scene, because that was at this point in my life of sheer desperation, you know, friends moving away, feeling really empty. So I joined this 10-mile run, and we ran along the Regent's Canal from East London down into Limehouse, and then along the river into Tower Bridge. And I kept up, I think, for about 5 miles, and then my legs were just turning to jelly. And I was thinking, I can't be the newcomer holding everyone back. I just can't, because to me, this social scene was like my way out of this big void in my life. And I did what I could to hang on. And luckily there was a man, an older man, who was like in his late 50s. And I think he could see that I was struggling. And he said, don't worry, he says, I'm happy to slow down. And he slowed down and kind of escorted me back. And the rest of the group ran on. And I remember getting back kind of after the 10 miles, half limping, thinking that I've just done irreparable damage to my legs. And then I felt sick afterwards, and we sat in the bar. This running club has its own bar, which was one of the highlights, which made me want to join. And I sat in the bar afterwards, shivering and feeling sick. But yet at the same time, although I felt awful, I felt this real sense of achievement and the sense of survival, and the exertion I felt really nulled all the emptiness that I'd been feeling before. And I think that was it for me. That got me hooked. This was a way of kind of forgetting this low patch I was in. And suddenly I had a new project, which was, what can I do? What can my body do? What can I do next? And it all went from there. And I started going to this running club every Thursday night. And that led to other revelations, such as the easiest way to get to running club was by bike, because there's no easy way on public transport. So I bought a bike, which was new to me. And even that felt really tough. I mean, it was only 3 miles up the canal, which is nothing. But at the time, for me, that felt really tough, because it was the beginning of winter by the time I got a bike. And that means that you have to wear waterproof trousers over your jeans, and you've got to buy lights, and you've got to get a backpack instead of a handbag. So it was all these things which just made me feel tough and made me want to do more.
But it's interesting. I mean, there's a couple of things in there. The fact you're saying it was, it doesn't seem tough, but actually, if you haven't ridden a bike, or you haven't been running, to go out and run 10 miles or to get on a bike and cycle 3 miles, it is challenging. So I love this new project that you've taken on. How did it change your lifestyle as such?
First of all, it changed my lifestyle because suddenly the the people that I was mixing with were a lot more wholesome and outdoorsy, and it made me want to follow them. So one of the things I noticed about people in Run Club was this absence of materialism in a way. So I think because I'd had this trendy media lifestyle that was full of cocktail bars and trendy parties, and it's all about who you know and what you're wearing. And then suddenly I was in a running club bar, which is based in an old schoolhouse in Hackney, and people just sit around in their running leggings having a beer after a run. And I just thought, this is so raw, this is so lovely, and people are talking about runs that they've done. There's people from all walks of life. It's not there are some professionals there who've probably also got a glamorous side to their life outside of Run Club. But in that moment, everyone is brought together by a shared interest, and people are judged not by what they wear or what they do, but just how much they love running and how much that they contribute to the club. So that was one side, how it changed my life, was just this an introduction rather to a more raw and wholesome social sphere. And then the other bit was just that my weekends changed. Instead of meeting friends for brunch and gossiping about a wild nights or pointless dates that we'd been on, suddenly I was going to cross-country races. And then later, after the winter ended and the following summer came around, I started cycling, and then I started open water swimming. So my whole weekends were just felt a lot more fulfilling and wholesome.
So your first race was the cross-country race where you were stood in the puddle on the start line. You got through that race, obviously. How did you go about sort of deciding on your next challenge or the next event that you wanted to do?
Well, I think first of all, I wanted to throw myself into Run Club, and I went to every single race that was happening on a Saturday. And I was driven just purely by, I don't want my weekends to feel as empty as they did during that autumn of 2013. And I think that was my main motivation. It's like, fill your weekends and make new friends. And my motivation wasn't the fitness. It was just keep busy, keep doing these new things. So I just did whatever was going on, which sometimes it was a cross-country race, sometimes it was a trail race in Epping Forest. And then when spring came round, I think then I'd acquired this new confidence that, I can do these things. Not only am I fit enough to do it, but also logistically I can do it. I know exactly what to pack in a backpack to keep myself warm and dry after a race. It's the logistical challenge, I think, which is as big as the physical challenge when you're not used to it. So once I'd acquired this confidence, then I set some of my own individual challenges. So first of all, I signed up to a half marathon, which was in Windsor. That was my first one. And then I went on a triathlon training holiday in May in France, which is with my running club. And that was intimidating in itself because everyone on that holiday were quite seasoned types, and they'd done triathlons before. They'd done lots of sporty holidays. And I didn't want to be the glamorous city girl type just tagging along. I really wanted to feel that I fitted in. So that whole week, I was really paranoid about being exposed as this sort of girly girl. And I remember turning up at the airport with a little wheelie suitcase, and everyone else had sports holdalls, and that was my first mistake. I was thinking, oh gosh, I'm going to be, ridiculed. And I remember having so many toiletries, and everyone else just had these tiny little bags. But I was just determined to fit in. And we went on our first day. We had a road cycle training session, and I'd never been on a road bike before, so I'd hired one for the week. And we all split into groups, 3 different level groups, and I decided to go for the middle group. And bear in mind, I'd never been on a road bike before. I'd never used cleats before. And for some reason, I followed the wrong we all set off together and we were supposed to stick in our groups, but I followed the wrong person. I ended up in the fast group, and it was just the most terrifying experience of my life, because there were these really experienced cyclists hurtling around the French hills, and there's me on this road bike. I didn't even know how to change gears, because, as many of your listeners will know, on a road bike you change up gears. On the right hand side you push the lever one way for up and one way for down, and on the other side for the big ring it's like completely the opposite way round. So I totally couldn't figure it out. My gears were all over the place. I couldn't clip out of the pedals, and I was just trying desperately to keep up with these riders, and they were just gradually getting further and further away from me. So it was things like that happened all the time. Every time I took on some sort of a new challenge, I seemed to have disastrous consequences. But I never got turned off. For me, it was just an adventure, and it just made me more and more determined to succeed.
When do you think sort of the imposter syndrome and the fear and the worry that you were feeling from going out there and, really not knowing what you were doing, but just obviously giving it your all, when do you think that fear changed to confidence? I mean, do you remember a time when you look back and thought, hold on, I'm doing this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like that, imposter syndrome. I think that was it was a gradual thing, and I realized that when did that happen? I think I got it with running quite early on, because I started doing all these running races and then realized that, hey, I can do this. I can do this, a 15-mile trail race in Epping Forest, even though I was scared of it before, and realizing that actually there were other people all the time entering the club who were like me on day one, not that experienced and probably quite intimidated. But I think with me, instead of going, okay, now I'm experienced now, I was just looking for the next challenge. So once I got comfortable with running, then it was like, right, I'm going to get into cycling and then triathlon. So the imposter syndrome probably went with running, and I started feeling confident. But then it was like, right, I'm going to start cycling. And then it kind of went through the whole process all over again. So I remember the summer of 2014, which was like the summer following the autumn that I joined the running club, going on these bike rides, and with whatever group I could find. It was usually people within the running club who were also did a bit of cycling, and desperately trying to keep up, and going on my first 100k ride and feeling completely comatose for the whole afternoon on the sofa. So it was almost like once I'd conquered one sport, it's like I wanted to feel that same sense of exertion all over again. And I think I still have that. So actually, I've probably not got rid of that, as you call it, imposter syndrome, because I think I'm always looking for something else. Because to me, the addiction is realizing that you can do more than you think, and we all can. We can all, our bodies and minds are capable of so much more than we think.
I mean, what's really interesting, I think, is there's been like a huge lifestyle change that you've been on, from this having a very glamorous lifestyle, lots of booze, dating, brunches, it obviously sounds super, super fun. And a lot of your identity is probably tied up in that. Suddenly you have been on this journey to almost get rid of your old skin and change who you are as a person. How difficult was that for old friends and family who maybe didn't understand the journey that you were on? If you were starting to say decline invitations, or actually I can't go out on Friday night because I've got this race on Saturday, or I can't do brunch because I'm cycling, or I can't do,
Yeah, that was something that I struggled with a lot. And I was torn between this new and old. So on the one hand, I wanted to stay really healthy, because I think once you discover the joys of outdoor sport and getting fit is a real addiction, because you just feel your body getting fitter and stronger and your mind getting fitter and stronger. So you don't want to just go out drinking and ruin it all. But at the same time, I also felt, my old friends were still my true friends. And this is one of the things that I realized in the book this is one of the things I talk about, was that, yes, it opened me up to this new social scene. And yes, I was going on bike rides on Saturdays and going to running races with running club and going to the bar on a Thursday night after the long runs. So I had this sort of new thriving social scene, but it was also still quite peripheral, really, because in those group scenarios, you don't make real friends. I think you do if you're into team sport, you probably do make long-lasting friendships. But when you're just part of a large club, it's still all very periphery. So I realized kind of through my journey that actually I started all this fitness lifestyle to make new friends. But actually my true friends were still the ones that I had from my old life. But actually what I got from the new scene, my new fitness scene, was actually not the social side, which is what I sought originally. It was the deeper things, such as a stronger mental attitude, a resilience, a kind of waving goodbye to materialism. These were like lasting things that I got from fitness. And that was the irony, really, which was the very thing that I seeked out to find when I first joined running club, was I just need new mates. But actually, yes, I found new mates, but not really, really close mates. What I found was actually a lot deeper and a lot more lasting. And I realized, without wanting to put a spoiler on the end of my book, but what I realized at the end was there's still a lot of my old life that is worth rekindling. And actually a lot of my old friends, when I felt that I was losing my old friends because they were all moving away and having children. And what I realized, actually, it wasn't that I was losing touch with them or they were moving away. It was that I was rigid. I was just stuck in this kind of party lifestyle. And actually it was me probably who seemed distant to them, because one of the things that outdoor sport has taught me is the joy of just hanging out with people. Because I think before I always thought socializing goes hand in hand with a bottle of wine, or it's got to be done in a cocktail bar. And actually now what I would do is go on a long bike ride and call in at one of my friends who lives several miles out of London. And I've acquired this sense of just being able to hang out and socialize without drinking. So this was the irony. It's like it didn't just give me new friends. It actually just reconnected me back to my old life and gave me a lot more valuable skills and attributes.
I mean, moving from running into triathlon, tell us more about that, because triathlon has its own. I mean, I've never done a triathlon, but from what I can see there is like a triathlon culture. It's the gear, it's the transitions, it's the training. It's a lifestyle choice doing a triathlon and becoming a triathlete. So tell us more about that experience of going after your first race.
Oh gosh, my first race is really funny. And if ever I need to think about how far I've come, I just have to think back to this race. And if everyone is doing a triathlon, they've just got to think of my first experience, and they know that they'll probably do better. So I did a race in Cheshire. It was called the Cholmondeley Castle triathlon. And I chose this one because my mum lives in Cheshire. And I thought, I can combine it to a trip home to see my mum without giving it a thought of how I'd get there. The fact that I have a bike and I don't have a car and I've got to get the bike on the train and all this sort of stuff. It didn't occur to me. So the morning before the race, when I'm due to get the train to Cheshire to stay at my mum the night before, I suddenly realised that I don't have a backpack. I've got like a little backpack that I go to running club, but I don't have a stuff that I can take everything in. All I've got is my little wheelie Louis Vuitton suitcase. So how on earth am I going to get that and a bike on the train? So I had to whiz out and buy the kind of backpack that I had as a student, one of these like big towering things. So anyway, I get to Cheshire and my mum gives me a lift to my first triathlon really early in the morning. And I do the swim. I had a hyperventilating attack in the water, which I now know is quite common because when you get into cold water, your body has your body increases adrenaline. So that combined with race nerves can make you hyperventilate. And I had this a lot during my whole first year of doing triathlon, and I could never understand why, because I never got it when I was training in open water, but I always got it in a race, just a complete breathlessness. You know, you're going really slowly and you feel like you're sprinting up a hill or something. And I didn't know what it was. And I thought, oh my gosh, maybe I've spontaneously lost all my fitness overnight, you know. So that was the first disaster. And I was breaststroking for like half the swim. But I finally got out of the water and I got into transition. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll give my hair a little dry. I had a towel there. So I towel dried my hair. And then I put a bit of sun cream on. And it wasn't even sunny. But for me, it was more that I thought, oh, my skin's going to get really dry because I've just been in the water. And then not only did I put sun cream on my arms, but I had some better stuff for my face. I had Decleor anti-aging hypoallergenic stuff for my face. So I was putting that on, you know, massaging all the contours of my face. And then, I mean, everyone at this point was just running into transition, grabbing their bikes and legging it out. And then I'm contemplating, oh, am I going to get a bit cold on the bike? I better put a fleece on. So I put this fleece on. And then I thought, oh, no one else is. I better take it off again. And then I thought, oh no, I've got all my dried figs, because I use dried fruit for fuel instead. I don't have energy gels or anything like that. I much prefer natural things. So I always have figs or dates. And I'd got all these in my pocket. So I thought, no, I better put the fleece on. And it was this old bobbly thing. It wasn't at all aerodynamic or fancy. And then finally I got on my bike, and I was riding a hybrid bike. It wasn't even a road bike at this point. I didn't own a road bike then. It was the same bike that I used to go up the canal to running club with. So everyone was just like going past me on these really speedy bikes with the fancy wheels, you know. And then at about 30 kilometers into the 40-kilometer bike ride, my contact lens fell out, or one of them did. And luckily I was carrying one with me, because this happens regularly that my contact lenses fall out. So I was prepared. But of course, I couldn't put it in without a mirror. So I stopped by the side of the road, and there was this parked car and a lay-by with a driver in the seat. And I just said, do you mind? I said, I'm in a race. Can I just use your wing mirror? And I stopped to put my contact lens in, and then carried on, and then finished the bike. And then I got onto the run, and I had a pretty uneventful run, other than having to pee in a bush, which, if you've ever tried to pee in an all-in-one tri-suit, is not very successful. So I think I finished that triathlon in about 3 hours, which is like, now I think, you know, that's quite slow, but it's not bad for a first attempt. But to put it into perspective, my second triathlon, I think I did it in like 2 hours 20. So that just puts into perspective how bad it was.
But it's all a learning experience, though. I mean, what do you think you've learned most from doing triathlons that you've been able to apply to other aspects of your life?
I think this attitude of just being able to put up with things and do it. So I make the analogy in my book that if you can count yourself through any sort of painful experience when you're training, when you're in a race, for example, if you're running the 10K at the end of a triathlon and you've got a massive blister on your foot because you're running without socks, which is normally what I do, I just put up with it. I just think it's 10K, it's going to be over in 40 minutes or 45 minutes. So just do it. And it's the same in training. You know, sometimes I'll say if you're on a long bike ride and you're soaking wet because it's raining and you're shivering and you're wet to the skin. And I just kind of think, it's going to be over. And I think what all these training sessions have taught me and all these races have taught me is that it does come to an end. Right. So I think I used to feel like I used to look at all these challenges and think, oh my gosh, that sounds awful. And somehow imagine that I'd be stuck forevermore freezing cold and in pain. But actually, what it teaches you, all these things come to an end. Every long bike ride I've been on, every training run where everything's been chafing or everything's been freezing, normally I end up in my flat at the end of it in a hot shower, eating nice food with the heating on, and it's all fine. And I think it's that sounds so simple, but actually that's what it's taught me, that you can count yourself through things and nothing is really bad. So now, see, I still think of, a lot of your guests on this podcast are people that have, trekked for days on end in the mountains and in polar exploration. And I think that is so much tougher because they don't know when it is going to end. Whereas doing triathlon or outdoor sport, really, it's just a temporary period of your life. It's very temporary. And that's how I can always get through anything, whether it's a grueling hill training session or a track training session where you're at maximum heart rate and you're really killing yourself. I always think it's just 30 minutes or it's just 40 minutes or it's just 5 hours on a bike, whatever it is. There's a defined amount of time, so that translates into other areas of life in so many ways. If you're in a boring work meeting, you can just think it'll be over in a couple of hours. It's the sense of compartmentalizing it.
Absolutely. I mean, and 2 years later, you qualify for the age group world championships, which is absolutely fantastic. Tell us a little bit more about your training during that period. Did you get a coach involved? Was it you sort of deciding what you were going to focus on and how you were going to structure your week? How did that work?
Yeah, it was me. So I qualified in the June 2015. So it was like almost 2 years after I'd first turned up to running club and got into the whole outdoor sports in the first place. Almost 2 years after that, and it was after my second season of triathlon. And I did a qualifying race called the Imposter, which is in Leicestershire. And I remember going to this qualification race and just thinking, what am I doing? I got up on my own at 4 a.m. I had to hire a car to get there. And I didn't go with club friends. It was something that I entered on my own, which was very much against like my initial goal of, why I got into sport was initially for the camaraderie ship. So I was thinking, so why am I doing something on my own? Why am I hiring a car, getting up at 4 a.m. to do this qualification race for a world championship triathlon? Like, who do I think I am? I had this real self-doubt when I was on my way there. And again, it was another freezing cold morning. It was raining. I was on my period. And you just think, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And I really couldn't articulate my goal. It was just like I was in the habit of pushing myself and doing more and seeing what I could do. So I turned up at this race and had this massive drama at the beginning. I always seem to have a drama at the beginning of triathlons, I think, because I get nervous. I don't realize it at the time, but I must do. So I'd forgotten to put my stickers on my bike, and I had to run back to the hire car like 10 minutes before race start, where I'd left all the stickers with the numbers on, and run back. And I arrived at the start line with like a minute to spare. But anyway, for some reason, I had the race of my life. I was just really on form that day, and I couldn't believe it when I qualified. So that was the June, and the World Championships were in Chicago the following September. So I didn't really have a lot of time to change my fitness, or all I could do was perfect it. I had 3 months to get as fit as you can. And I thought about getting a coach, but then I thought, if I get a coach, there's lots of people in my running club and my triathlon club as well who have coaches. But what I find with the athletes who have coaches, they miss out a lot on the club events, because the coach is always saying, oh, you've got to do your long, slow run here. You've got to do your intervals here. So you can't just randomly turn up and do a club session, or you can't just randomly join the Saturday ride to Brighton, for example, if someone's organised something, because you have to stick to a programme. And I thought that's not actually why I do it. So I just devised my own training plan just by reading about it, by reading magazines, reading books. So what I roughly based my training on was 2 sessions of each of the disciplines, running, cycling, swimming. One which would be endurance, so long and slow. So, for example, for swimming, it'd be maybe a long, easy 2 to 3K swim, and then a speed session might be sets of like 200-meter speed sets in the pool. And then I'd do something similar for cycling and running. So one long, slow for the endurance, and then one interval session, or like if it's on the bike, I'd do a watt bike session, and then a strength session once a week. And that was roughly what my training consisted of. So yes, I just did it myself and used common sense, really.
Love it. I love it. Tell us about Chicago.
So Chicago was a real experience. I arrived there. I should also say, actually, before I got to Chicago, since you asked me about my training, one thing I did do in order to qualify was the year before, after my first season of triathlon, I realised that the cycling was my weakest discipline. So, because most races give you a breakdown of where you rank in each of the sport, and I always found I came really, really low down on the bike. So I decided that cycling was the thing that I really need to improve on. So it was the winter before I qualified. I was like, right, I'm going to get the miles in on the bike. And I just went out with whoever I could find to cycle with, because a lot of people don't want to go out on the bike in the winter. And I joined a lot of sportives, because at the time I was only new to cycling, so I didn't have a Garmin device or anything that could give me a route. And I was still a bit scared of changing a puncture. So I didn't really want to go out on my own. So I joined these sportives all through the winter, and I went on these rides in treacherous weather. I've got this one memory of one ride in Kent. It was called the Hell of the Ashdown. And the clue is in the name. It was hell, because it was 75 miles, and I'd never cycled more than 100K before, and it was all over hills, and there was hail that day. There was ice, hail, and then later there was torrential rain. So it's pretty much every single bit of bad weather we got in one day. And I remember when I finished this race, because again, I don't have a car, so all these things I had to go to on a train. And at this particular race, there were a few people that I knew who'd done it from my triathlon club, but they were so much faster than me that they just kind of left me at the start. And I knew that I wasn't even going to see them at the end. I was going to be so much slower. And I was just so cold and so wet by the end of it. I'd taken a few wrong turnings, mainly because I was right at the back, so I wasn't with the main group. And I remember getting home that night because I had to come back on the train, soaking wet, sitting on the train, hugging my bike. I was that cold, just shivering at this wreck. I'd just done 75 miles when I'd never cycled anywhere near that far before, plus the bit to the train station. Absolutely shivering. And I got home, and I remember just being like, what do I do first? Do I eat? Do I stretch? Do I get into a hot shower, or do I hose my bike down? What do I do? And I just remember bringing my bike through because I live in a flat, not, with very little outdoor space, with a little balcony. So my bike just drips all this oil and mud all the way through the flat. And then I was dizzy with hunger, because I didn't know at this point how to fuel rides. And I got into the shower. I literally grabbed some bread with some peanut butter and got into the shower, because I didn't know what to do first, and ate in the shower. And you really know, I've done this several times since, that you really know when you're broken, when you have to do that, because you just don't know what to do first, get warm or eat. And there were so many rides like that, where I was just near breaking point. And that was my way of trying to get better on the bike. But it did pay off eventually, because by the time the following spring arrived, I was actually able to keep up with the middle level riders of events that I did.
Was the World Championship everything that you thought it was going to be?
So when I got to Chicago, the setup was, it was amazing to be in GB kit and mixing with GB athletes, especially for me, someone that had not considered myself sporty for my whole adult life. To be walking around with GBR printed on my jacket was phenomenal. So the atmosphere and everything was amazing. But when I got there, I felt this niggle the whole time I was in Chicago, because I was there 3 days before the race. And I couldn't help noticing that everyone around me was there either with friends or with partners or family members. And it dawned on me that this race is such a high level that, of course, people bring their loved ones with them. So it's not like the little local triathlon where people turn up with their tri-club mates, or people just turn up with kind of periphery, sporty club friends. This was a big deal. So people had bought friends and bought relatives that had flown across the world. And I kind of felt this sense of niggling loneliness. And I remember on race morning, I got really worked up. It was probably part nerves and part just this accumulation of what I'd been noticing over the last 3 days, this sense of where's the jolly? Where's Team GB outings to the pub? You know, it was this awareness of that. And on race morning, I had to drop my bag off at the bag drop, and then walk to the start line, which was a good, say, half a mile or 3/4 of a mile away. And anyone who's done triathlon will know that you can't have anything with you, because you're going to get in the water. So you can't even take your flip-flops. You've got to literally put everything that you're not using in your bag. So all your trainers for the run and your cycle shoes and everything are in the bike rack area. But once you drop your bag, you just have to walk. So, and I remember, it's such a simple thing, but the floor was red hot, and it was like walking on burning hot pokers, and the sun was really, really bright, and I couldn't wear sunglasses. So I had sunglasses in the transition area where my bike was, but then to get to the start line, you don't have anything. And it really hit me. And there were all these people that were walking like with their partners or walking with their family members with their flip-flops and a pair of sunglasses and a little bag and a little bottle of water, because they had someone there that could take all their things from them at the start. And I had no one. And it just really hit me. And I felt really tearful. And this is not a way to start a world championship event. So I got to the start line just in such a state, fighting back tears. But I did it. I did the race, and I had another hyperventilating attack in the water, probably because of the rising adrenaline. But I did it. I got through it. I did a reasonable time. I think I came 41st, which in theory makes me the 41st fastest triathlete in the 35 to 40-year-old age category in the world, which doesn't sound bad. But at the end of it, I felt really low, because it was the culmination of all these things that I've pushed myself through for the last 3 years, all these challenges, all these freezing cold, wet cycle rides. And that I stood at the end of the race and there was no one there. And that was my realization. I thought, I don't do this for medals or to win, because I'm never going to win one of these triathlons. I don't think I have the genes for that. I do it for this sense of accomplishment. I think to feel that I'm tough and to feel that I can, and for the sense of camaraderie when I'm with my club friends. I do it for a day out because it is a healthy thing to do. And that was my realization. And after that, I thought, I'm never going to do a World Championships event again. I'm going to do triathlon for sure. I'm going to keep doing events, but I'm not going to do it for medals. I'm just going to do it for the sense of achievement and the sense of can-do attitude that it gives me.
Mm. And it sounds as well, it is a lot about friendships and the friends that you've made. And actually, sometimes you can look around, and even though you're amongst so many people and can feel lonely, and it's just not a nice it's not a nice feeling. It's not a nice place to be in. I mean, when you came back from Chicago, did you readjust anything, make any changes? Did you stop doing triathlon for a while, or did you just get straight back into it?
I wanted to keep up my fitness because I felt that I'd never been so fit ever in my life, and I was really reluctant to give that up. So I carried on training like a maverick. And everyone, one of the common questions when you're in sporty circles is, "What are you training for?" It's a little bit like the kind of what do you do for a living? It's like one of those conversation openers. And I was always like, well, I don't actually know what I'm training for. I'm just training because I like to keep this sense of I can do anything. I can go on a 100-mile bike ride at the drop of a hat without extra training. I love that. So no, I didn't change much in my training, but what I did change was my attitude, because I realized that I don't do it. I don't do all these things for medals. And actually, I'm not that bothered about knocking a minute or so off my time. So I relaxed my regime in that I started to go back to the pattern I had at the beginning, which was just do all the club events, just do any club event that's going. If there's a club trip to a half marathon on the weekend, just sign up to that. If there's a group ride to the seaside, just go to that. And that is what I love about it. So I think I stopped the kind of, I'm going to do my interval sessions today. I stopped being so particular about my training and just thought, I'm going to do the fun stuff. I'm going to, why do I do it? I do it for the day out, the sense of day out. And I do it because I don't want to go back to my old life, which was all about socializing around drinking and bars and all that. And I think something happened a few months after I got back from Chicago that I thought this epitomizes why I keep up all this outdoor sport. A friend of mine from the Tri Club said, "Do you want to cycle to Paris? We're getting a group together." Now this was on the Wednesday, and he was planning on doing it like the following Tuesday or something. It was like 5 days before, and I just went, yeah, right, let's do it. And I didn't have to do any extra training. I knew that I wouldn't be at the front. I knew I'd probably struggle, but the fact that I could do it, not just because I had the physical ability, but it was also the sense of I'm not going to have a shower for a couple of days. I'm probably not going to sleep that night, but I know I can survive that. So if someone had said that to me 2 years previous to that, I would have thought, oh gosh, where are we going to sleep? Are we going to get to have a change of clothes? Will I get to have a wash? All these things. And like now, when my friends said that, I just said, yeah, because I know, because of all these things that my training has taught me, it's not just about the fitness. It's about having that mental ability to go, it's all right. It's just going to be 28 hours. Because what we would do is get to Paris and then get the Eurostar back, still in our sweaty cycle kit, drinking a few beers, but who cares? So it's that, I think, it's that attitude that epitomizes why I do it. So the short answer to your question, yes, I still do triathlons and I still love it. But the bigger picture to me is doing more real challenges, like cycling to Paris, or later this year I'm gonna cycle the whole South Downs Way with a friend. So it's not about the times and the competitive elements. It's just keeping that sense of can do alive and keeping this connection to the outdoors and to nature. I think that's the bigger picture for me.
Yeah, and it's so important to know your why, know why you're doing it. Have you got any tips and advice for other women out there who are looking to make a change in their life, get into health and fitness, running, swimming, cycling, make a change from, I want to say like booze and boys, but, just sort of have a lifestyle change, do something completely different?
I think my first thing is you've got to have a reason why. I think of all these things I pushed myself through, my overwhelming drive was just, I do not want to go back to this horrible empty period of my life that I was in before. And that was what kept me going. And I don't think I realized at the time, because when I was writing my book, my editor kept saying to me, but why were you doing this? You've got to explain, like, why were you carrying on when you were blue with cold and wet? So for me, it was like an avoidance always. It was like, I just don't want to go back to what I had. So I think whatever you're doing, you've got to identify almost why. And it could be that you want something in it, but it could also be that you don't want something. So it could be that, it could be simple as, I want to lose weight and get healthy. But it could also be, like me, I don't want to have like a boring Saturday again. But whatever, it could be such a range of reasons. But you've got to find out why, because there's no way you're going to push yourself and get yourself out of bed when you're tired or when it's raining outside if there isn't a reason. So that's the first thing I'd say. And the second thing is, don't be intimidated, because I used to think of sporty stuff as being really full of people that have done it their whole lives, really intimidated. I used to think about the sporty girls in my school who, played netball for their county and were super tough and walked around with permanently grazed knees, and you used to think it was going to be full of all that kind of person, but it's not at all. There's a real mix, and you'll find that these days, I think, especially with the momentum of campaigns like This Girl Can, the This Girl Can campaign, there are so many people in clubs now who are quite new to it and who are quite tame, and I just think give it a try. You will find like-minded people, and you will find newcomers and beginners. So give it a try, and don't be scared.
Absolutely.
And also, like, don't set yourself a massive target. So loads of people come to me and say, "Oh, I wish I do fitness. I'm just not into it. I hate running, or I hate the thought of going outside when I get home from work because I'm really tired." Loads of people say this to me, and I say to them, just don't feel like you've got to go out and do a massive run. Just do 10 minutes. I mean, anyone can do 10 minutes, and it's better than nothing. Just get out as soon as you get home from work or whatever. If you're tired, just put your trainers on, put on a coat if it's freezing cold, and go out for 10 minutes. And that's all you've got to do. And I think if you tell yourself it's just 10 minutes, it's a manageable chunk, and you'll be able to do it. If you set off and say, right, I'm going to go for a 40-minute run, you'll find every displacement activity possible not to do it. And this is what I do. There's times when I'm really, really tired or overtrained, aching muscles, and I think, I've got to do a tempo run. And I just don't do that anymore, because I think if you're filled with a sense of ennui and a sense of dread, you're not going to do it. And sometimes I just say to myself, I'll just do an easy 5-mile run, and that's all I'm going to do today. And if people did that, they'd find it a lot easier to manage.
Absolutely. I always found it was like, just don't stop. Like, as soon as you get home, just keep moving. Don't sit on the couch, whatever you do. Don't turn the television on. Just either get changed straight away and get out without even stopping to think.
Absolutely. That's what I do. When I sometimes do a run off the bike. So for triathlon, running immediately after you've got off the bike is a really important session. And often I get home from a long bike ride and just think, oh my God, I've got to do a run now. And it's the last thing I want to do. But I do it before I even put my bike away. So I get in, and again, because living in London, it makes it a bit more complicated, because I have to kind of it's quite incongruous to come in, say if I've been out on a bike ride in Essex or something and I'm splattered with mud and road spray, and then I go out running in all the residential streets of near to Canary Wharf where I live, and I'm like covered in mud and I'm covered in road spray, and I've got my padded cycle shorts on, and I just go out on a little run, and I think if people see me, they're going to be thinking, where's she been? What on earth did she do? I've got helmet hair. But you just have to do it, because if I kind of got in and then changed into my running things, I just wouldn't go out again. So I always think just do it. Don't think, just do.
Absolutely. And Helen, where can people find your book, This Girl Ran, Tales of a Party Girl Turned Triathlete?
So it's the publisher is Summersdale, so you can either get it from the Summersdale publisher website, or it's also available on Amazon. And it's an audio book as well, so it's been recorded by Audible, so you can download it there. And it's also in some branches of Waterstones, definitely the Waterstones website and the W.H. Smith website. So yes, lots of places.
And where can people find out more about you and follow along with your journey? Whereabouts on social media?
So on Twitter, I'm Helen_Croydon. And you can see more about my journalism and background at helencroydon.com.
Fantastic. Helen, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing more about your incredible journey and your passion for triathlon and all of the advice that you've given. I really do appreciate it. And I know the listeners of the Tough Girl podcast will as well.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. I love the Tough Girl podcast. So it's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Hey Tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Helen and it's encouraged you to think about whether or not you want to make a change in your life, whether that's doing triathlon or something completely different. There's so many great pieces of advice in there. The particular one which stood out for me is not stopping. So when you come home, don't stop, keep moving, just get your trainers on, just get straight out the door. Don't sit down, don't stop, because if you do, you're never going to do it. So that's a key piece of advice. And even like sometimes in the morning when you're getting out of bed, don't think about it. Have your clothes laid out, ready to go to the gym, ready to go to that run, and just put them on without thinking. Just get out the house as quickly as possible. Just want to give you a few recommendations for other Tough Girl podcast episodes, which I think you should listen to, especially if you are interested in triathlon. We've had a number of great interviews. So take a listen to Susie Cheetham. She's a professional triathlete and came 6th at the Ironman World Championships. We've spoken to Helen Rossiter, who's a triathlete, runner, explorer, fangirl. Her hashtag is Where Wheels Go. Helen spent the past couple of months over in Europe, traveling about and just living an incredible lifestyle. Over down in Australia, I should say, we've connected with Jen Brown, who is a running and triathlon coach, also the founder of Sparta Chicks, which is an incredible podcast as well. Jen interviews incredible women from, again, very similar to Tough Girl podcast, lots of athletes, lots of adventurers, lots of triathletes as well. Amazing tips and advice in the podcast, so well worth listening to. Rachel Bowen, who's a PE teacher and triathlete. She actually overcame a brain tumor, and she talks a lot about how her training for triathlon helped her approach her medical condition and enabled her to really focus on the recovery as an athlete. We spoke with Paris Edwards as well, and she tells the story of Be the Egg, which I'm sure you've probably heard mentioned. If you haven't, take a listen to Paris as she shares more about mental toughness and mental resilience. We've also spoken with Helen Russell, Jessie Stensland, and Gail Bernhardt. So there's about sort of 8 different women that we've spoken to. There is actually a playlist on YouTube, so you can just go through and listen to all of the triathlete-based episodes one after the other if you so wish. But lots of inspiration, lots of motivation. Super excited if you're going after your first triathlon, or if you've done lots of triathlons. It's such a great challenge. I've personally never done one myself, but what a way to combine running, swimming, and cycling. Final few remarks from me. It's just a massive thank you to all of my patrons who are supporting me every single month. I say it every single month, but honestly, I could not produce the podcast. I could not produce this content without your financial support. It makes such a difference knowing that I have a regular source of income coming in at the beginning of every month, knowing that I'll be able to pay for the running costs of the Tough Girl podcast. It'll enable me to say yes to the opportunities that come my way, whether it's heading down to London, going to networking events, etc. It honestly does make a massive difference and allows me to promote and share the Tough Girl podcast, which in turn allows me to share these incredible role models and share more of their stories, and ultimately to increase the amount of female role models out there in the media. We are building up such an incredible resource now. So please do go check out toughgirlchallenges.com. Well over 150 episodes for you to look at. Again, we've got explorers, adventurers, athletes, runners, swimmers, cyclists, you name it, we've probably interviewed them. We've also got sea kayakers as well. And pilots. So there's a whole host of amazing women on the Tough Girl podcast. If you want to learn more about me and my story, if you're new to the podcast, please do go check out toughgirlchallenges.com. Everything you need to know is on there. It has been a long episode, so I'll let you get on with your day. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, have fun, enjoy it, give it your all. Just get out there, smash it. The more you put into anything, the more you're going to get out. Best of luck with all your future challenges. I know you'll go out and absolutely smash it and give it your all. Take care. Until next week, when the Tough Girl podcast comes out again on Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. That's when I'll be able to catch up with you again. All right, lots of love. Speak to you soon. Bye.